Hey everybody, how you doing? This is I'm Stacey Taylor. This is my first podcast. I'm calling it How Did I Get Life? I will be interviewing ex-lifers and ex-life withouters who got convicted of crimes, whether they did it or did not did it, but spent a bunch of years in prison and had to figure out a way to get out of prison by becoming their true selves and not the person that these characters that we had made for ourselves that we wanted society to view us as. So my first interviewer, participant is a person I know for sure. We done hung out together, walked the yards together, and it's an amazing story. I'm gonna go a little further when we get into it, but I'm gonna let him introduce himself. Introduce yourself to the people.
Hey, how y'all doing, man? I'm Traviel. Yeah, how did I get life? That's a great subject matter right there.
Yes,
I'm a former lifer.
Yes.
At 19 years old, I was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. I walked off 26 calendars. Before Governor Brown commuted my sentence in 2018, allowing me to come home.
Shouts out to Governor Brown.
Man, for sure. It wasn't. And it's a whole lot of people that's in agreement with that because it wasn't just me,
Without a doubt.
He gave us an opportunity to really to earn freedom. He didn't give us anything, but he looked at our rehabilitative efforts, and he gave us an opportunity to earn our freedom, man. And that was a real blessing because I was sentenced to life without a possibility of parole, LWOP.
And that means you supposed to die in jail.
Man, they call it, right?
Yeah.
Toe tag parole.
Yeah, toe tag.
They call it toe tag parole because when you got life without the possibility of parole, it's only what 3 ways that you're gonna get out of prison.
Mm-hmm.
One is death, which is common.
Common.
The second one is either you getting your case overturned in the courts, which is rare.
Slim to none.
And then the governor commuting your sentence, which was almost never.
Never.
So being able to sit on this side of the wall, sit at the table in front of this mic with you, is an awesome honor and a blessing.
Man, likewise, to be here with you is a blessing. You know what I'm saying? Because we walked it off, and it's a hell of an experience. That it's so many. It's like to be on this side of on the wall now, and to be able to hanging out with guys. We done hung out on a bunch of occasions at my comedy shows. You know what I mean? From sitting in that day room, it's amazing. It's something different. You know what I mean? It really is.
If I may, right? People with the comedy, people probably think you just busting on the scene. Got out the bus, realized you had a funny bone.
Yeah.
Well, I remember, boy, you used to come to that pinochle table, boy. Put some respect on it.
Yeah, they let them know. Hey. That's right. I was the first baby. Baby didn't know. Baby got this shit for me. You know what I'm saying?
Sure, we used to have a ball.
We used to have a ball, man. We made the best of that.
Stitches, because if we wasn't laughing, man, we was crying, man.
Without
you know
a
what
doubt.
I mean?
Without a doubt.
We was crying.
So let's get off into it, man. How did you get life, man? Let's take it from the beginning. You know what I mean? Because what society as a whole doesn't really understand that everybody that is going through something, has went through something in life, it stems from some childhood trauma that was left unresolved. You know what I mean? So we're gonna start off from the beginning. Let's take it to family situation, moms, pops, you getting birth. Let's from your early memories of living. Let's take it there.
Almost definitely. I was wondering how deep you wanted to go.
Oh, we going all the way there.
I can go there with you.
Yeah, we going.
He had to do the work in order to get out of prison.
That's right. We going there.
I'm not gonna say I grew up in a dysfunctional home, but I had a dysfunctional family.
Okay.
As far back as I can remember, I think it's safe to say that every boy idolizes his father.
The first role model.
Or he want to be his father.
Should be your first role model.
But as far back as I can remember with my father, it was always rejection. I was growing up on the east side of L.A. My father was on the west side of L.A. with his other family.
Yeah.
While I was a little kid laying in the bed, crying like, Mom, where my daddy at? Where my daddy at? And I wanted my father, and I think that was the thing that it traumatized me.
Well, not without a doubt.
Because it gave me that sense that I was unworthy, that I was unloved,
abandonment issues,
that I was unwanted,
without a doubt.
And it triggered low self-esteem in me.
No.
So I found out that I began to try to live my life, you know, in a way to get the praises of my peers. And so because my father, you know, rejected me, my father said that I wasn't S-H-I-T and I'll never be S-H-I-T. I lived my life like I was diarrhea, you know what I mean?
Without a doubt.
And I was just running. And so what that did was it opened me up. It made me susceptible to the older homies in the neighborhood, you know, and before
Looking
I
father
know it,
figures.
yeah, they started out as the big brother, and before you know it, you was looking at them like they was the father figure,
Without
you
a
know,
doubt.
because why? You know, they began to introduce you to this lifestyle, and as you excelled in the lifestyle where you did some crazy stuff, they praised you.
They praised
you. Know,
you.
Gave you all the
Gave you
honor
accolades.
and the glory. I remember I had a homie, he was like, man, little homie, you down. And he was like, you know, and I was scared as a mug, but he was like, you down, you know, and I was doing stuff out of fear because I didn't want to be rejected. I wanted to be accepted.
Again, from,
you know, from
the
the
abandonment
homies.
issues now.
Exactly.
That's right.
When I
From
was a
starting
kid.
from the father.
Starting from the
Without a
pops,
doubt.
right?
Yeah. I'm going to go deep into it. We're going
And
to talk
so
about it.
the homie, like, he hit me with, he say, little homie, if you need clothes, whatever you need, every Friday I go to the Inglewood swap meet. You know, all you gotta do is come get in the car, man. I take you shopping every Friday. So I know in order to stay in that grace that there was certain things that I was gonna have to do. But at the end of the day, I felt accepted, and the more that brazen that I became, the more acceptance that I got. So before I knew it, I done adopted this criminal-minded mindset. I done adopted this criminal-minded lifestyle.
Mentality.
I'm not even going to get into the gangs. I'm not going to get into all that. But I'm going to get into the lifestyle because it wasn't the gangs that led me to prison. It was the lifestyle.
Without a doubt.
You know, and
Without
so
a doubt.
you know, with the lifestyle, you know, you doing these things and you have a sense of
family, community.
Exactly.
You know, you want to stand up for you know, for the people that's you feel standing up for you.
Exactly.
At this time. So if they from, you know, wherever they from, that's where I'm gonna be from too, because this is my area. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. You know, and so you know, you have that mentality that I live for my family and I die for my family. You know what I mean?
Without a doubt.
And you know, your blood family, they there, but they kind of get lost up in the shuffle. You know, I grew up in a predominantly single home. It was my mama. You know, my mother trying to raise a boy into a man. You know, and she, you know, couldn't really teach me what manhood was about, but she was able to give me her idea of what a man should be, and that's what, you know, she tried to mold me into. I remember a true story. I was probably like third grade. I probably didn't even weigh 100 pounds then, and I remember some dudes chasing me home. I stayed right across the street from McKinley, so it was a short run. You know what I mean? But I'm hollering, "Mama, open the door! Mama, open the door!" And she opened the door, and she like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Mama, they chasing me. They trying to fight me." My mama took me in a room. She told me to come up out them pants. I didn't buy them pants to beat on them, and my mama whooped me. And she looked at me and she said, "I ain't raising no punks."
No,
You know,
that's how they spoke back then in them days. I remember.
So my mama told me, "Go back out there and fight."
Right.
And so I went back outside and I fought. And I kept on fighting.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to look like a punk in my mama's eye.
That's right.
And you know what that really did, what that taught me was that anytime I had conflict, the only way to solve it was through violence. So that just cemented some of the ideologies that I had developed. You know what I mean? And as I grew older, I realized that the behavior that I was exhibiting was nothing but, it was trauma driven. It was response to trauma. These were the coping mechanisms that I developed. I became criminal minded so that I could be accepted, because in my mind, if I'm accepted, ain't nobody gonna reject me and can't nobody hurt me no more.
That's right.
So the more criminal minded I became, the more accepted I became.
The gang brought you into. Now your name ringing.
The more I was trying to push.
That's right, without a doubt.
You know, and it wasn't.
Every time you went and did this, oh, the homie Trey did that, the homie. I'm gonna do some more shit, cause shit, I like how that feel. Let me do some more shit. What?
Man.
You thought that was something. Nigga, let me show you this here.
Exactly.
Let me show you some new shit.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah, you ain't seen nothing. I'm just getting started.
And
I feel you.
You know, that's what eventually led me to prison.
Without a doubt.
You know, so you know, a lot of times we that's a great question. It's a great topic. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of times when we say why did we get to prison, the first thing we do is get to I
The
popped
crime.
this one, I popped.
Nah,
I did
that ain't
this,
how
I
you
did
got
that.
there.
But that
That ain't
was
how you
nothing
got
but
there.
a symptom
Yeah, that ain't how you got there.
to this childhood trauma.
Yes.
And you know, because in our
See, that's why
community-
they call it the show, How Did I Get to Prison? So how did I get life?
Yeah,
You see what I'm saying? And you just don't get life from one situation.
exactly.
You start somewhere and you build to be the person that can put you in a position where you can be in a situation where somebody can give you a life sentence. Because the normal people in society is not going to put themselves in situations where they can get a life sentence.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying? So what happened to you in your childhood that allowed you to feel that I could be here and be there with all this trauma going on and all this torment going on and all these atrocities of life going on, but I'm comfortable with being in this space.
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable with being a part of it as well, if need be.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
the concept, like I said, this show is to show people not just the crime. We're not glorifying the crime. We're glorifying how a person has come up out of the psychosis of, you know, not breaking traditional boundaries, just continue just going to jail and, you know, and being the same person and dying on these streets. So I want people to get a understanding of what, you know, what people had to go through from the beginning, what made them become a different person, what was that aha moment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
yeah, because it was, you know, I mean, like I said, in the home, you know, mom was in abusive relationships, so you know, you watch the domestic stuff in the home,
childhood
you know,
trauma.
You watch all these things, and you know, I remember that my mom had got married, and before they got married, I looked at her husband to be, and I was like, hey man, if you ever put your hands on my mama, I'll kill you, right? I ain't number like, it's 89, so I'm like 14 years old,
Yeah.
right? And he looked at me, he called me Lil Daddy. He said, Lil Daddy, I didn't have to beat your mama up to get with her, and I ain't got to beat your mama up to break up with her. You know, and the dude never put his hands on my mama, you know, but growing up, seeing my mom in abusive relationships, as being a kid, it was nothing that I can do to protect her. So now, you know, I feel like I'm a man now.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm big enough. I can handle one of you niggas
I want
now.
to protect my mama. You know what I mean? Because I felt weak then. This was my, you know, that was traumatizing.
That's
to
trauma,
me.
yeah, without a doubt.
You know what I mean? And so I never wanted to feel weak again, even in the home to the streets.
Yeah.
I never wanted to feel weak.
Without
You know,
doubt.
and so it was like, if I had to bust you over the head with something, I'll bust you over the head with something. If I had to let that thing go, I'll let that thing go. Whatever it was, I wanted to be powerful. You know, because of my childhood trauma.
Being in that weak position where
Yeah.
you couldn't do nothing, you know, it's like, I don't never want to be there again. I'm big enough now, you know, I'm not gonna never let nobody take advantage of somebody that I
Ever
love.
again.
Yeah, without a doubt. If
Ever
I could do
again.
something about it, without a doubt.
You know, and, you know, all of those things, you know, I became angry.
Yeah.
You know, I had bitterness inside of me. I had resentment inside of me. You know, and like I said, I didn't want to look like no punk. So my first response was always violence.
That was
You know,
it.
so these things right here became the new norm.
Without a doubt.
You know, violence became the new norm. Anger became the new norm. Whatever I did became the new norm. Why? Because I began to be accepted for those things. So this is my new normal. This is my new reality. You know what I mean? And this is what I strive to do. I woke up in the morning, didn't care about if I seen, you know, if I laid in the bed at night, didn't care. You know, we lived a lifestyle that it was like if I died at night. You know what I mean? It is what it is. But boy, do this whole day, I'm gonna live it the way I wanna live it because tomorrow wasn't promised.
So let's talk about the first time. Let's talk about the first time you committed a crime. No matter how small it was, and you know, because it's a build-up. You know what I mean? We just don't just jump into
The first
major
time
crime.
I can remember committing a crime, I went to the grocery store
That's
with my
where it
mom,
started.
right? And you know, my mom she'll walk around the store and she'll bust a bag open or something and she'll be eating it.
Yeah.
You know, so unbeknownst to me, when we get to the register, my mom had that bag and she'll still pay for it, right? But, you know, I'm like, okay, mom's doing it. So I put some candy in my pocket. And we walking around the store, and I put some candy in my pocket. And I never forget, when we got out the store, I pulled that candy out of my pocket. And my mom was like, where you get that from? I'm like, the store? She like, who bought it? I'm like, nobody, you know. Moms got with my program, you know, back then, you know, the black women, they get it, where you act up at is where you lay at. You know what I mean? And mom took me back in the store. She took me back into the store and made me give it back, you know. And that was the first time that I remember, you know, committing a crime. When I got home, mama tore my tail up again. You know, like, I ain't raising no thieves.
Without a doubt.
You know what I mean?
Without a doubt.
You can go out there and fight, but you ain't gonna be
You're
stealing.
a thief, that's right, without
You know?
a doubt. So when was the first time you got arrested?
The first time that I got arrested, it had to be about 88, 89. First time I really got took to the police station.
To the police station.
I remember it was the homie funeral. And the homie funeral was in the rival neighborhood. I'm in the car with the homie. I'm a young buck. And the homie, the rivals was, you know how it is when you had them, everybody looky-loo. You got the police everywhere. Yeah. And I don't know if you want me to say names, because I can say names, but I just, you know.
It don't matter. Shit. If it's simple, yes. If it's complicated, no.
You know, but the homie.
We ain't talking about open cases. We ain't doing that. The mother cats get out.
It was the homie Pac-Man, Pac-Man funeral.
Without a doubt, rest in peace.
You know, yeah, without a doubt. And it was in Hooverhood.
Yeah. And
the homie I was in the car with, hit the cone and the Hoovers across the street, and he hit the gas. And 77 was right behind us. Yeah. You know, they jack us up, got the 40 in the front seat of the car and all that. And the homie look at me like, man, my name is Kunta Kinte. I'm like, all right. You know what I mean? They asked my name. It's Kunta Kinte. Yeah. I'm like, all right. They're like, what's his name? Kunta Kinte.
Kunta Kinte.
You know, because I'm young, they tried to punk me.
Yeah.
And when it didn't work, they put me in the cuffs, put us both in cuffs, took us to 77 and called my mom. They called my mom's, right? That was like the first time I was arrested, but it was the hardest, right? Yeah. Because my mom was at work, so she couldn't take off work to come get me. So she sent my grandfather, her father, to come see me. And, you know, my grandfather is a pillar of the community, you know, American made, you know what I mean? You know, he got pride. They had 13 kids, and he got pride, you know? And for him to have to come pick his grandson up, the way that man looked at me, man, oh, man, I felt this big the way my granddaddy looked at me.
At that time.
You know what I mean? But that was like my introduction right there, man. From that point on.
Still wasn't enough, though, to deter you.
Nah, man, I remember.
Without a doubt.
You know, and you know, shout out to my moms.
Without a doubt.
Because my moms did everything that she possibly could. I remember, true story.
I feel you on that.
I stole, my stepbrother, I stole some dope out of his shoes, right? You know, he had some dope in his shoes, and I gave it to the homie. Hey, man, can you sell this for me? I don't know what it's worth. Yeah. I'm a puppy, you know what I mean? And he looked, and he gave me like $75, right? Like, I got it. And he took the dope and gave me $75. And you know, back then, this is in the early 80s.
That's a lot of money. A lot of money.
$75 was like $750.
Man, I could do a whole lot of shit with $75.
So we running, you know, I'm Big Bang Hank this day. We up and down at 79th Street, running back and forth to the store, the hamburger stand. I get a homie $5 and all that. He get home. His mama going, where you get this money from? I got it from Posse. Where Posse get that money from? He sold some dope, right? So I come home. My mama like, boy, empty out your pockets. So I empty out my pockets. Where you get this money from, right? Still, you know, we partying all day. I still got like $20 in my pocket, right?
It's a lot of money,
you know, back then, you
should have $20 money,
You got one.
Yeah, the Mexican bankroll.
Yeah, man. So mom, like, you know, she threw me in the car. She took me straight to Firestone Sheriff Station, right? Get the Firestone Sheriff.
She wasn't playing, Jack.
They throw me in a holding tank. She said, look here, this is my baby, my one and only son. The streets is pulling him. I'm trying to save his life, right? So they put me in the holding tank. You know, I think I'm tough, right? I get in the holding tank. I lay on the bench, man. Hey, man, can y'all turn the lights off? You know, I lay on the bench, and I go to sleep. I'm laying on the bench, put my arms inside my T-shirt, and go to sleep. Then the homicide detectives come get me. And they take me in the back. and they pull out a photo album, probably about this thick, and it's pictures of dudes. On one picture they G'd up, then they turn the page, they laid out dead. Like, you want this fate? And I'm like, you know, I'm trying to save face in front of them, and I ain't scared to die. I died for the homie. I died for the hood, right? Yeah. Then after that, my mama took me to Thrifty's. That was our little thing. Anything, you know, difficult going, we would go to Thrifty's.
Thrifty's right there on 103rd and Avalon back then?
We go
That's
get
the
us
old Thrifty's right
get
there.
us a scoop of ice cream.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then we went to Roosevelt Park, and we just sat in the park, and I cried like a baby. Mama, I'm sorry, Mama. I was really scared, but I couldn't show it, right? I was cool for like 2 weeks, maybe a month. And I was right back at it, man. You know what I mean? And I just kept getting arrested, you know, arrested for robbery, arrested for assault, deadly weapon, arrested. And, you know, my mom's, she worked with
and all this is short term now.
Yeah, short term.
Because this from like, what, 14 to
18.
To 18, yes.
You know, and I never forget this one. I had a robbery, and the guy that I robbed, I had just turned 17. The guy that I robbed, he was in college, and he had, the time I was finna go to trial, he had finals. And so he didn't want to come to court and testify because he didn't want to miss his finals.
What a blessing.
So they come back, and they offered me a deal because I had a robbery and I had assault with a deadly weapon. So they offered me a deal for battery, probation. Cool.
I'm going.
Man, I'm finna go in there and plead guilty.
Which is a trick.
My regular judge wasn't there. And it was a lady that was sitting on the bench, and she looked and she said, you know what? I think he need to go to YA. Because I had never been to youth authority or nothing. My mama
none of that.
She worked for the police.
Yeah.
So when they would call her, she knew how to talk to police lingo. So they be looking at my mama like, oh, you one of us.
Okay.
And they would always release
Cut you a little
me.
slack.
You know what I mean? And so my lawyer stood up. She was about to sentence me to juvenile hall or camp, right? And my lawyer stood up and was like, Your Honor, the probation report is old. Before I would like to reconsider that, and we do a new probation report. And she was like, after a minute, she agreed to it, right? So when I went back to court, February 4th, 1992. And my regular judge was there, and he asked me, are you still gonna enter that guilty plea? For sure. And he said, okay, I'm gonna sentence you to probation. And after he sentenced me to probation, he looked at me and he said, happy birthday. Because I got sentenced to probation on my 18th birthday.
Wow. He knew you'd be back though.
Little over 2 months went by.
They knew you'd be back.
I was back in jail for murder.
They knew you'd be back. Probation, that's just, you're coming back. We're just gonna put a tail on you right now.
And that's what they do with
That's
probation.
all it is. Now we got
system.
you for real now. Because you got probation, plus what you done. We're gonna tag you with it's all a trap.
And you know.
And the caught the murder, so that's where you 2 months later.
2 months later.
Got a whole murder case.
Whole murder case.
So let's just fast forward a little bit. You was how old when that happened?
I was 18, my senior year of high school.
And you was how old when you came home?
44.
Okay, we're gonna speak in between them times now. So without any other, stuff that don't matter, you know what I mean? Just basis of fighting your case, being, county jail, all this new to you, you know what I mean? And just being implemented into a whole nother world. How did that go when you got there?
Man, I was scared as hell. Hey,
We all be. Anybody say they wasn't, we just put a good front on.
Hey, it was like, you know what it was like? The best way that I can describe it, right? When I walked through the back door of the police station, it was like I went into the twilight zone. You're now entered into a new dimension.
New dimension.
Everything, it was a civilized society, but it was uncivilized because it was very barbaric. You know what I mean? It was barbaric. It was even the rough and the tough get eaten alive.
That's right.
It was a predatory society. And I didn't know. Let me show you. Right here, I am thinking I know it all, right? And I'm on the red team. They put in that county jail. Every little room is a holding tank. right? And
What's the year?
1992.
Oh yeah, this it was
It's
really vicious.
on.
Always vicious and
So
vicious.
not knowing the script,
Everything was still separated.
yeah,
then.
they put me in I go in this little room, because up there, a closet is a holding tank in the county jail
That's
back
right.
then, right? I go in the room and ain't nothing. I'm like, okay, these are all my peoples. This is all black folks in the room. I go all the way to the back, set my bedroll down, squatted down in the back. Everybody looking at me like, who is this fool, right?
Yeah.
Not knowing. I must have been in there like 2 minutes because it wasn't nothing but God. I'm gonna tell you why I say it wasn't nothing but God, right? Because when they come to the door and call my name, I shoot up out of there, right? And when I shoot out, I hear somebody say, "Cuz, who was that?" Right? And somebody else said, "I don't know, cuz, who that was. That wasn't one of the homies, And the sheriff looked at me, he said, "I saved you." I'm like, "What do you mean you saved me?" He said, "Because you was finna go to the Crip module." That was a line for the Crip module. Not even knowing.
Not even knowing.
If anybody in that thing would have said, "Hey, homie, where you from?" And
you
I said,
been dead to the world.
Man, and I was all the way in the back.
Dead to the world.
18 years old.
Dead to the world.
Don't even weigh 150 pounds.
Dead to the world. Because it was vicious back then.
Man.
Ooh.
I didn't know, when you go to jail, it ain't no handbook. Nobody give you no
really
handbook and say,
no, it really isn't.
Here, these are the do's and the don'ts.
Well, for me, I went through the process of it. I did the juvenile hall, I did the camp programs, I did the YA, I did the county jail. So I was already, abreast to how things work, certain places, certain things, because I was already in the world. I got introduced to it in the younger stages. So by the time you get to juvenile hall, by the time you get to YA, then by the time you get to the county, you didn't met people all over, because prison's a whole nother community.
Yeah.
And you only back in our days, we only met people from other areas when you was in jail.
Yeah.
You didn't meet people from other areas because we didn't really go nowhere back then. We hung out in our own societies. Maybe we go to different places you see people, but for the most part, we only met numerous of people through different neighborhoods in the penitentiary. You know what I'm saying? So, all right. In the county, fight your case. How long you had to fight your case in the county?
I got to the county in 92. I left November of 93. So I was down there like 16 months. It wasn't no long process. My trial capital punishment case, my trial lasted 8 days.
8 days.
You know what I mean? And 4 of the 8 days was deliberation.
Life without
the possibility of parole.
Do you want to talk about that?
Oh man, it ain't nothing but a thing.
Okay, well let's go into the case that they convict you for.
Well, 1992, we all know about 1991. We know about the infamous Rodney King situation.
Without doubt.
Then in 1992, the officers go on trial. They get found not guilty. The city erupts.
Erupt 92. April.
Yeah, April. What was that? April 29th? April 28th?
Something.
One of
April
them
something.
days, the city erupt. I remember that morning, my mom come in the room, like, what you doing today? I'm like, nothing. She's like, stay in the house today, the verdict coming. My step-pops come in the room, stay in the house today, the verdict coming. My sister called me, she living in Inglewood. My sister called me, hey, stay in the house today, that verdict coming. Everybody telling me stay in the house, the verdict coming. All right, man, we living in North Hollywood, California at the time. I turn on the TV, the sun going down, I turn the TV on, the city is on fire. In my mind, I gotta get there. I'm watching them loop, everything, I gotta get there, man. I never made it. Walk down the street, we get into it with some Hispanic males. We start out fighting. In the course of the fight, I grab a 2x4 and I hit Elias Garcia in the head with the 2x4, fractured his skull. He had to have emergency brain surgery. He was in a coma for 8 months. He subsequently died from recurring bronchopneumonia.
Rest in peace.
Yes, sir. And because of the circumstances of the case, you know, they gave me an attempted robbery. And because of the circumstances of the case, the district attorney, her name was Shelley Samuels at the time. She was the district attorney. She prosecuted, she was a special prosecutor. They prosecuted me to the full extent of the law. You know, they were 18 years old. Murder robbery, and they was asking for the death penalty. I'll never forget that day. I was sitting in the tank getting arraigned in municipal court, and she turned and she looked at me, and she looked at me like I killed her baby, and she cleared her throat, and she gave me a look, and she said, "In your honor, we're gonna be asking for the death penalty, right?" I'm 18 years old.
18 years old.
Hey man, my big toe started throbbing, right? Just started throbbing. I looked at my toe, my shoe was doing this. Because my heart fell all the way to my big toe, man. You know what I mean? I didn't know I couldn't move.
Couldn't believe that.
I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do, man. And they subsequently dropped the death penalty because I had just turned 18. I didn't have a record. Because, you know, when you turn 18, your juvenile stuff is sealed. If it's not tied into what you were for, and because it wasn't gang related or anything like that, they had nothing to give me the death penalty with. So they dropped the death penalty on me. And subsequently, I went to trial, got found guilty, and they sentenced me to life without a possibility of parole. At 19 years old.
So what was prison like?
Oh, man.
Where'd you first land at?
I first landed at Delano. You know, I got lucky.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna lie. I got lucky. I wound up in 2 spots, Delano, and then they sent me to Lancaster. And I was in Lancaster for 24 years. Oh,
right? You did all your time. Yeah, you lucked up.
And, you know, then I was there at a time. You remember when they had said if you was from down south, you had to stay down south? If you from up north, you was sending up north?
Yeah.
So I got lucky around that time. I caught me a couple shoe programs and all that, and they did my shoe in the hole. By the time, you know, you get transferred, your shoe up, they, you know,
back to the line again.
CSR board dropped the transfer, put me back on the line.
Yeah.
So I was lucky to move around.
You was lucky.
But, excuse me, I was there, you know, but I never forget when I caught the chain, right? You know, I was nervous sitting in the day room at the county jail playing pinochle.
Yeah.
And when they called me to catch the chain, you know, to go to the pen, you know, you had to go back to the county jail. And so I remember Lisa Cannon night beat?
Yeah.
Lisa, they got the
I remember that.
Got Lisa Cannon night beat on, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting in the tank. They got me chained by myself in the tank in the cage on the bus. And everybody on the bus is going home.
Yeah.
And then all the fools on the bus like, yeah, when I get out, I'm finna do this, I'm finna do that. And before I know it, I said, man, why y'all shut the hell up, man? Nobody want to hear that. You know, I'm stressing because Lisa Cannon on night beat, all them songs that's getting dedicated to me. They playing them all. Man. I'm like 2 seconds away from crying. And so somebody said, what's wrong with that dude, man? Old said, man, that youngster going to the pen, he got life without a possibility of parole. He ain't never getting out. You know, and that ringed in my ear. It's still ringing right now. Like I just heard it. Yeah. You know? And so the bus was quiet. And when I got to the county jail, you know, they put me on the bus to go to the pen. And I was cool on the bus. You know, everybody got life. Yeah. You know, I'm cool. I'm amongst my people. Yeah. And I'll never forget when we turned that corner and I seen the prison lights. Yeah. I started shaking like a 7.7 earthquake. Now,
let me get the people the story so they have a better understanding of what was happening. He was leaving one place with a bunch of people that was already going home already. Yeah. See, they had already got their time, they on the way out the door. But he going back to the county jail to get on the Grey Goose to go to the penitentiary. So he on the bus with a bunch of people that's on their way home, and they talking all the shit they finna do when they get out. And he just got a life without sentence at 19 years old, you know what I mean? And at this time and point, that was a death sentence. You was gonna die in the penitentiary at this particular time and point, how they had it set up. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to just break that down for the viewers so you get understanding of what happened during that transition. So now you're in the penitentiary.
And you know, so my first day on the yard.
Yeah.
Essays out there squabbling.
Is this Delano, this the reception, or this the main line?
main line, fast forward.
Okay,
to
you
the
didn't
main
you
line.
didn't got past the lane of reception.
And now I'm on the
Now
main line.
you're in Lancaster, the main line. Okay.
So my first day on the yard, right? So let me set the scene. For people that don't know what the prison yard look like, you got cement walls and you got a little gate on top of them if you're on the 270. If you're on the 180, it's all cement.
All
right?
cement.
And all around the yard, it got signs that says warning.
No warning shots.
Fired.
Period.
Right? So you got this officer that's in the tower
With a big-
with a Mini 14.
Yes, sir.
And remember they had the SK 9
Yes, sir.
right?
Yes, sir. Yes,
You know,
sir.
they took the SKs
Yes, sir.
because the SKs was they shoot you in the toe.
Tear you down.
And they come about your forehead.
Tear you down.
Right? Because it bounce around. But you got this dude with this Mini 14, then you got 5 builders on the yard, and everybody got the same arsenal.
Yeah.
So when something go down, everybody in the window, they
Everybody.
have 6 different angles to shoot you.
Everybody got a gun, except
And
you.
I remember my introduction to the yard. Yard down. And I'm standing there, I don't know the protocol. I'm
Yeah.
standing there looking,
Yeah.
and the homie snatched me down. Get down.
Yeah,
Like, what
yeah.
you doing, man? And that fool fired that Mini 14.
Mm.
Boom! And all you heard was, boom, look.
You could hear it.
That echo.
The echo through
You
them
know,
walls.
The
Them
It
walls.
just echoed for like 5
You
minutes.
could hear it. It's scary. It's sad.
My whole heart just skipped. And what I did was, I reached for my hip,
Like you was back on the street again.
but I didn't have no pistol.
Ain't nothing there. Nothing but a hip.
I said, oh man, they gonna kill me.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Because, you know, back then, you know, if you remember, back then you had a lot of dudes that was walking around with prosthetic legs and all that.
No, I remember.
They done shot
Yeah, I remember.
They was shooting their limbs off.
Yeah, I remember.
And I'm looking like, man, I can't be like that. You know what
I
I mean?
remember.
And I'm just like, wow. You know, that was my introduction, right? And, you know, then you get to learning the politics, and then you got the dudes want to come and try to slide the paperwork, the pipes up under the door. Read this, homie.
Read this.
No, man,
Yeah.
you read that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Join this blood gang
Join
while
that
we in
gang,
prison.
you know what I
He already in the gang already, but
Yeah.
we got another gang within the gang that's going better than the gang you was already in. It's a prison gang.
I didn't succumb to none of that stuff
Yeah.
right there, right? But
Me
you know,
neither.
Let me tell you, man. Prison was fun. You know that? When I first started prison, I was 19 years old. It was fun.
Yeah.
All we was doing, you know, my homie Punchy didn't lie. Because Punchy used to go to the pen, come out swole, and he used to tell us, oh, it's a blood party. All we do is big back, b-boo, we buffing iron and eating spreads.
Yeah.
And that's what prison really was.
Yeah.
But, you know, minus we had the prison politics.
That's
the Red
right.
14,
All the other bullshit you don't hear about.
Get into it with
That's
the
right.
essays.
That's right.
Then you had the different prison gangs.
Yes.
So now you got to watch the homies. You know, he didn't tell us all that, but it
Nah.
was still fun. It was fun because why? I was young.
You was
I
young.
wild, and I'm with the homies.
That's
and this,
right.
you know, in our minds, we think you in prison. That's status.
It made
you know what I
sense.
mean?
It made sense back then.
And we all we was doing was smoking and drinking.
That's it.
And I remember
Our lives away.
exactly
In prison.
in prison.
Yeah.
You know, my first, 5, 6, 7 years in prison, I got like 20 write-ups for violent behavior, fighting, getting into it with the police, you know, all this old stuff. You know, I was frequently in the hole. You know, but I was having fun
Yeah.
because this was a lifestyle. And
Without
this,
doubt.
this was the pinnacle of the lifestyle.
This is
Mine
what
was a
you-
life sentence.
This is what you was living for,
Exactly.
without a doubt.
You know, and it wasn't until I started getting older, right?
By the way, yeah, listen, let me ask you this question. What was I like to call it aha moment. Because I remember I had my aha moment that changed everything from that point to who I thought I was to who I became. What was your aha moment? What was that moment? What had happened? What had triggered it that you said, you know what? I don't want to be that person no more. Let me do something different, man. Even if I got life without, even though they said I'm gonna die in a penitentiary, I know I don't want to be a goofball for the rest of my life. What was that moment?
It was 2 things that happened.
Okay, run it down to us.
The first thing was my mom had got sick. And my mom had been talking to me about the Lord and all these things, right? And I couldn't get in contact with my mom that day. And so I called her sister, and her sister called the hospital. And my mom answered the phone, and she sounded so terrible, I didn't even realize that was my mother. And she was like, "It's me, your mom." I'm like, "What's up?" And my mom said, "The doctors think I had a stroke." I'm like, "Is that right?" I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." She said, "The doctors are coming in to examine me. Can you call me back in like 5 minutes?" So I waited. I got off the phone. I'm in Lancaster. I'm on D Yard. I'm on phone 5. I'm in 5 building. I'm between phone 80 and 81. I'm sitting on the floor, right? I'm stressed out the game. Moms, that's all I got.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I need moms to be all right. And so I prayed. We had a saying, the S God. Anything good, the S God smiled on. Anything bad, the S God frowned on. The S God. On this particular day, I didn't pray to the S God. I prayed and I said, "Lord, if you real, heal my mama. And if you heal my mama, I'll serve you for the rest of my days." When I called my mama back, my mom told me, she said, "Baby," she sounded like herself, everything. She said they gave me a clean bill of health on my way home. Called me in 15 minutes. Now, I didn't give my life to God right away.
Of course not.
It took some time. But then September 9th, 2000, I gave my life to Christ. That was the first thing, where it was an aha moment. Because my mom always told me and my sister that wherever station you find yourself in life, strive to be the best person that you possibly can be. And, so I decided that I wanted to be the best person that I could possibly be, no matter where I was.
No matter where you at.
And so my life began to transition. And then, remember the movie Life with Eddie Murphy?
Yeah, and Martin Lawrence. Not Martin Lawrence, Eddie Murphy, Martin Lawrence, yeah.
They showed the movie Life.
Yeah.
Right? You remember how UPN, they show the movie
Yeah, all the time, yeah.
You'd be up like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning.
Trying to catch
it. Kind of black movie.
Without a doubt, because you didn't get a lot of black movies where it was at in the pen.
So the movie came on Life. I'm sitting on the bed, I'm cracking up, I'm laughing, because the movie's hilarious.
Yeah.
Right? Then you remember the scene where as they got older, everybody started dying.
Yes.
And they just start fading
Yeah.
out. They start fading out.
Yeah.
And when I got to that scene, right at that scene, when it finished, a commercial came on. And it was like, it gave me time to think on that.
Just relive that moment right there.
And it sunk in. Bro, I cried like a baby. Because, I finally saw, for the first time, I saw that this is my reality.
I'm going to die in this motherfucking jail.
I'm supposed to die in prison. And you know what? I made up in my mind that I was not going to die in prison and that I was going to do everything that I possibly could do to get out of prison.
That's all you could do.
From that point on, I no longer messed with the cell phones. I no longer drank. I no longer smoked marijuana. I no longer participated in anything. Man, I'll start going to church, got saved, gave my life to Christ. I enrolled in Bible college. I earned the AA degree. I earned the BA degree. I earned the master's degree in biblical study. I earned certification as a biblical counselor with the specialty is being in family and drug and abuses. I made up in my mind that every self-help class that was needed, that was available on the yard, I took it. I was in the dog program. I was training dogs. And all of this time, I had life without a possibility of parole.
Not knowing you'd ever get out of jail.
Put myself in a position
to get
that if my circumstances or the laws ever change, that
I'd be ready.
I was going to be in a position to go home.
So you're going to do the sugar-free?
Stay ready, got to get ready.
You're going to stay ready, so you ain't got to get ready.
I stayed ready, man.
You stayed ready. You was there.
Stayed ready.
I remember.
And you know it. You
I was there. I was there. I remember.
You was there.
Yeah, I remember.
You know what I mean?
Without a
you
doubt.
didn't see me. You bear witness.
Yeah, without a doubt.
If I lie at any point, smack me in my mouth.
True story.
Because you was right there with me.
Right.
You watched it.
And I was still smoking weed. Still drinking. I'm going. I'm gonna do weed. Yo. Fuck all that. I need the weed to get out of here. That's right.
They used to tell us, "Hey man, I need to go on over there because I'm about to do something illegal over here.
Right.
You don't want to partake of this? Get away from me."
Yeah.
And you come out there, we playing peanuts.
Yeah,
And you
talk
come
this
out there, and you was practicing your routine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
Without a doubt.
But those were my moments.
Yeah,
man.
without a doubt.
I made up in my mind that if I stayed in prison, I was gonna be the best person.
Okay, so what? So at doing all this good work to get out of prison, What transpired that opened up the doors that allow us to sit right here today?
So this, and you know, I tell everybody that, you know, I know everybody is not religious, but you know, but I tell everybody it was a divine moment, it was a divine appointment by God.
What that?
Because my partner, D'Angelo told me, man, you ever thought about filing a commutation with the governor?
Hmm.
I said, nah, that ain't gonna work for me because I got a murder, you know? And he was like, man, I'm telling you, man, you should try it. I'm like, nah. So I talked to my family, and they asked me, what can it hurt?
What can it hurt?
I said, it can't hurt.
You're gonna be in the same position you already in if it don't work out.
Do it. So I filed the commutation. You know, when Schwarzenegger got in the office,
Yeah.
you know, everybody thought
It was
the
over.
Terminator was gonna help us.
Nah, he didn't do shit.
The Terminator was killing us, right? So
He killed Tookie and everything. Kill Tookie, goddamn. Yeah.
But I went on ahead. I did my paperwork and everything. You know, nice presentation, turned it in. Now, if you remember, I think you might have been gone already, but before Obama
I was gone.
left office,
Yeah.
Obama called a lot of the black entertainers into the office,
Yeah.
to the White House,
Yeah.
and he told them, man, we have to find ways to end mass incarceration.
Yeah.
Common was
I
one
remember
of those
Common.
people.
Yeah, he started coming out there.
But Common said,
John Legend too.
yeah, John Legend too. He came to Lancaster.
Shouts out to Common, John Legend.
Man, hey, life changers.
Without a doubt.
Because if it wasn't for Common, I wouldn't have been in the position that I was in for my commutation. Now, now remember I told you that it was a divine setup, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So after I put my commutation in, a few years go by. You know, you forget all about it.
Yeah.
Because the governor there's no law say he has to.
You got to answer, respond, none of the above.
So, Common said that he didn't know nothing about mass incarceration, so he linked up with Scott Butnick, right? Scott Butnick started bringing him into the prisons. So he's doing a redemption tour, and he came to Lancaster, and we sat out there at the table, they videoing it, and they taped it, and talking and this and that. So he came back, he was supposed to have a concert. But you know how the weather is in Lancaster. The wind kicked up that night.
Yeah.
So you know that wind going.
It's over.
None of his equipment was able to, he couldn't hold none of his equipment down because the wind was too strong. So we went up a fire building where the dog program was at, and they had all these dignitaries from Sacramento, they had the cameras, and so we had a big round table, and we were talking about rehabilitation. Long story short, let me cut through the chase. After the conversation was over, somebody told me, hey, you need to go talk to her. So I went over here and I talked to this lady.
What's her name?
Nancy McFadden.
Nancy McFadden. Shouts out Nancy McFadden.
Shouts out to Nancy McFadden, right? But let me tell y'all this real fast and I'll hush up. So I talked to Nancy McFadden, a legislator, a sister. She took me over there and introduced me to Nancy McFadden. So me and Nancy McFadden is talking. She asked me, what have you done since you've been in prison? And I got to explain that, you know, sugar-free, stay ready, ain't got to get ready. So I laid out all my accolades to her. Yeah, I'm doing this on part of the dog program. I'm a founding member of the Pause for Life dog program. I'm doing all these things in prison. And she was like, is that right? She said, yeah. She said, have you filed for a commutation? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, how long ago? I said, for a few years ago. And she was like, okay. She said, what's your name? She wrote my name down in the book, my CDC number, and she looked me in my eyes. And she said, I'm going to tell the governor about you. Lo and behold, a couple months later, I'm a porter in the building. I'm sweeping past the counselor door.
So I had the porter job.
And the counselor said, Craig, I'm like, what's up? He said, come here, man. He said, hey, man, you got an interview with Parole Agent 3. I say, Parole Agent 3, never heard of them, right? You know, these ones is high up in Sacramento. Never heard of them. He said, I said, what this about? He said, I don't know. He said, oh, have you ever filed for a commutation? I said, yeah. He said, maybe that's what this is about. He said, it's scheduled for Monday. So Monday, Parole Agent 3 come interview me. And we verbally squabbling up in that room for about 3 hours. I'm talking about, we went through my whole life, as best I knew it, from conception all the way up until
the day you was there right there.
Right? And he asked me, I try to keep my C file clean as possible.
Yeah.
I had gang write-ups
Yeah.
in my C file, but I was never documented,
Yeah.
right? But somewhere in one of them things it said, we're all bloods. They're
Yeah.
all bloods,
Yeah.
right? We had a little melee on the yard. He said they're all bloods. And he went through my C file. He looked at me. He said, "Are you a gang member?" I said, "Formerly."
Yeah.
And he said, "What were you?" I said, "I was a blood." I said, "But I'm no longer a gang member. I don't subscribe to that anymore."
Yeah.
And he smiled and nodded his head because
He knew you told the truth.
I could have said, "Nah, man, I ain't no gang member because I'm not documented."
He knew that's bullshit.
He knew that 115 was in my file.
That's right.
And
So you
what
came
I told him,
clean.
I came clean. And I looked at him at the end. I said, "Hey, man, how I look?" He said, "Man, to be honest," he said, "you the cream of the crop." He said, "Man, at this point, remember, like, if I could rewind a little bit, remember I told you, I said I wasn't doing those things no more.
Yeah.
So I had almost 18 years
Clean
of
shit.
clean behavior.
Yeah.
So I was exhibiting rehabilitation for 18 years
Easy.
in prison.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so
People get traffic tickets in 18 years.
on level 4 and 3 yard.
Stop playing.
So fast forward, Governor Brown commute my sentence. The warden and the associate warden, they come get me and D'Angelo off the yard. We got commuted the same day, but
That's beautiful.
I let him tell his own story.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Phone ring at 3:00. This is the governor's office. I forgot the lady's names, but she said my name is, and I'm a representative of Governor Brown, and she got to reading off the governor is pleased with this, and the governor is pleased with that, and the governor is pleased with this. And because of your rehabilitative efforts, Governor Brown has decided to commute your sentence from life without a possibility of parole to 25 years to life.
Which means you was already walking out the door.
Made me eligible to go to the... See, people think that when you get your sentence commuted,
Nah.
that you just walk out the door.
You still got to go to parole board.
Still had to go to the parole
Yeah.
board.
But it's an easy transition from that
It's
point.
easier now.
Yeah, it's very much easier.
So I got...
Because the governor already signed you already. He stamped you. They're not going to go against their boss.
Exactly. So
No,
it's
without a
4
doubt. Without a doubt.
Right.
Without a doubt.
So when I went to the parole board, but I still had to prove rehabilitation, the commissioner looked at me and he said, "You know what? I've never seen this before."
Yeah, now you got to show it to them now.
He said, "You had life without the possibility of parole,
And
and you showed almost 20 years
no
of
relevance.
rehabilitation." He said, "Man, I was in there. I went in the parole room about 9 o'clock. I was back on the yard at 11 o'clock in line."
Listen, let me tell you something. That's when you get out of there. If you're in there for any long time period, you're going back to jail again. That's how I was. It took me 5 times to get out. The 5th time I went in at 9:30, I was back on the yard by 12.
Man.
Other than that, I was like, what the hell?
See, people don't even know
That's
that when
right.
you go to parole board, the average parole hearing is a minimum of 3 hours.
Minimum. So when you walk in there and they cut you out between there, they already know they're sending you home.
Exactly.
It's just formality. It's just getting on the market.
Got to make sure that they go.
Without a doubt.
Let me see if I can trip him up.
Let me see if let me make sure he's the same person
Exactly.
that he's supposed to be, that he said he was.
I lined up with what my central file said.
He was all the way live.
Now keep in mind, I said that was a divine appointment. Right?
Without a doubt.
Nessie McFadden, come to find out at the time, she was Governor Brown's either his executive assistant or executive secretary. She was one of his executives.
Right there next to him.
Right there.
Could
next
bend his ear with no problem.
Right there next to him. It was, and by the time the smoke cleared and the dust settled, when we got out of prison, shortly after we got out of prison, Nessie McFadden died.
Sorry to hear that. Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, man. One of the greatest women I ever met in my life, right? She died from breast cancer.
Live long enough to get you out of jail.
Point exactly.
Huh.
The whole time.
Ain't that something? Never
she
know who
was
our
dying
angels
of
was gonna
breast
be.
cancer. She was dying, but here it was.
She trying to get you out of jail.
Carrying my cause to the king.
Ain't that something? Who would have thought? So how long you been home now?
Oh man, May 18th of this year be 7 years.
7 years. What you done done since you didn't had this second chance opportunity of living? See what I wanna present to the world is that second chances. You know, you can't. Nobody remember how you start. They only remember how you finish. You know what I mean? Like Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby started off strong, but we ain't gonna remember Bill for being Dr. Huxtable. Bill was giving them ugly white bitches pills, man. So I don't want to remember now. You know what I'm saying? He fucked it up with me, tainted the shit. So you know, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. So
Yeah,
let's talk about this finish.
Well, I'm off parole.
But man, congratulations! What a blessing that
The
is.
reason why I say that is because when I got my parole papers said that I had lifetime parole.
No, that's right. I had it too. Lifetime
I
parole.
wasn't supposed to be reviewed to get off parole, or even considered to get off parole until this year.
Without a doubt.
A year and a half after being out, I got discharged from parole.
Without a doubt. What a feeling.
Right? Because my parole agent was like, I ain't even worried about you.
This is a waste of my time.
Yeah, just, and he put in the paperwork for me to get off parole. They let me off parole. But since I've been home, I've done a lot. I think I've had a plethora of jobs.
Yeah.
I think I just now found my niche.
Okay.
But I got licensed and ordained as a minister.
Without a doubt. Congratulations on that.
For a few years, I served as co-pastor of a church called God's Place of Worship.
Congratulations.
The associate pastor there. I'm no longer there now. I've been traveling throughout the country with Second Chance Prison Ministries.
Okay.
In association with Trinity Broadcast Network, where we've been going to various prisons and states doing prison ministry.
All right.
I just set up in Angola. I just set up in been all the way up to Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
From here it was, little old boy, sense of life without a possibility in the road.
Never supposed to come to be home again.
Never supposed to be. Going back in and being able to encourage and uplift the masses and
share your story.
God is not a respecter of persons.
Without a doubt.
You know what I mean? That if you work hard towards rehabilitation, the same thing that he do for me, he can do it for you.
That's right.
And just being an encouragement. Got a book published called Biblical Solutions.
Okay,
for
congratulations.
domestic violence.
Without a doubt.
We wrote it while we were incarcerated, and so we had a book published. It was on Amazon. I don't know if it still is or not. I've just been doing a number of things, and right now I'm working for Unite the People. I'm chief of staff at Unite the People.
Congratulations.
So everybody in office basically work for me. What we do there is, our co-founder, CEO, his name is Caesar McDowell. Caesar McDowell started Unite the People while he was in San Quentin serving 3 life sentences.
Shouts out to Shouts out to him, man.
He's home now.
Shouts out to him.
He just got elected. Look, just to show you, he just got elected as the vice president of the Black Chamber of Commerce in Long Beach.
Man had 3 life sentences in prison.
3 life sentences.
Man.
You know what I mean?
Won't he do it?
Won't he?
Huh.
And so our mission is to try to bring affordable legal services to the brothers and sisters that are still incarcerated, and we try to go throughout the country educating the people on mass incarceration. On our justice system, how unfair it is. And
yes.
So we do there. We're mentoring at-risk youth. We have an at-risk youth program. We're dealing with the community. Feeding and clothing the homeless and dealing with community issues. We do it all there, man. We got transitional homes, sober living homes, and I'm managing the whole empire.
Without a doubt, man. Congratulations, man. To all your success.
And
your whole life story is a blessing. You know what I mean? Like I said, I've been had the opportunity to be a part of it, to watch it transpire. You know what I mean? To be in there with you. To be out here with you and to see you maintain the exact person that you always been from there to here. It hasn't changed up. You didn't I'm out now, I'm gonna be somebody else that I wasn't gonna be no more, but I said I was gonna be, you know what I mean? But you've been consistent, you've been, a stand-up guy ever since I know you. We've been great, but and what people don't understand is that we mortal enemies when it comes to this neighborhood shit. Mortal enemies.
Hey, you know what?
You know what I'm saying? Without a doubt.
Hey, because I want to say this to the young people.
Yeah.
Say real fast, right?
Please do.
Because we out here and we gang banging.
Yeah.
We doing all of these things.
Yeah.
And if you are unfortunate enough to see the prison yard, the same dudes that you shoot that trying to kill, and they shooting at you trying to kill.
Be your best of friends.
They're going to be your best friends. It ain't no blood.
Hold on real fast. Hello? Today's podcast. I'm sitting in the Trey Real right now, man. You missed out, man.
Yeah, but you never sent me the address.
I did see that just, didn't I?
Hell no, you did.
Oh, my bad, man.
Yourself for that one.
I got to blame myself for that. Hey, we about to wrap it up. I'm going to holler at you in a minute, though. This squabbles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's up?
He said what's happening.
What's up?
All right, for sure. I'm going to holler at you. All right.
Yeah, them same dudes that you looking at your enemy out there right now.
Be your best partners in the penitentiary.
Best friend.
Without a
Y'all
doubt.
gonna be eating. Y'all gonna be drinking out the same cup.
Huh. Busting spreads together at the
Out
table.
the same bowl.
Yeah, talking shit, playing pinochle.
And when it's cracking with the essays and
Nah.
or whatever,
You put your back against the wall. That's right. That's right.
Swabbling up, man.
Without a doubt. So let me tell you something, man. You know, this has been a great interview. I appreciate you for coming out and being my first interview, man. It's a blessing, like I say. Man, it's a whole lot, you know, we could really say, you know, because we've been through a whole lot, but the time doesn't admit it. But this has been a great interview. My partner shared a story. What we want to convey to people is that second chances, you know, of kids and making the choices and the decisions, trying to be grown at 16, 15, 17, 18, sometimes even 20-something years old, you're not mentally developed to really deal with life on its terms. You're still trying to deal with life on your terms, and that's never going to work out. So this show, I want to just give a different perspective, because the news and the media, if you get one dude to get out of jail or do something wrong, he is the poster child for everybody who done something wrong. And what I want to give the world and the social media opportunity to see is that just because you make a decision when you're a child, it doesn't make up for the person that you will become. So just don't wash a person up off one mistake in life or things they decide to do, but give a person a chance, because, you know, life, you know, is about believing in yourself, believing in others, and allowing yourself to grow to be a better person if you just want that for yourself. So listen, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. My partner Trey Vieira. I'm Stacey Taylor. We had a great interview. We're going to do these interviews on a regular basis. How did I get life? This is how he got life. At some time and point, I'm going to convey my story, but I want to talk to the masses of the people that I know so we can really just get a great understanding of what second chances have done for a lot of people. Anything you want to leave with before you cut out here?
Shout out to Governor Brown.
Yep, shout out.
Shout out to Nancy McFadden.
Yes, without a
Shout
doubt.
out to the brothers and sisters that have made it across the finish line.
Without a doubt. Scott Budnick, because he's been doing a lot for prison reform.
People. Shout out to Unite the People.
Without a doubt.
McDowell and the crew. But shout out most importantly to the brothers and sisters that are still incarcerated.
That's right.
Keep working, keep pushing.
Believe in
keep
yourself,
fighting,
without a doubt.
because your time is coming too.
Without a doubt. And with that being said, we're going to end our first podcast, How Did I Get Life? Appreciate y'all for tuning in. Thanks, Trey Vieira, one more time for coming out. Get up for my producer, my studio director, Dre. We in this joint, man. We're having a great time, man. Appreciate y'all. Hey, TA came in to celebrate, to chill with us and watch us get us first show. So I want to give a shout out for him. Hey, and we're going to be here, man. Peace out. Y'all have a good time. See you next time.
It's the name here.